Welcome to You Can Recover, the podcast where each episode brings you one step closer to making peace with food and body. I'm your host, Andrea Wells, and I know firsthand what it's like to live with and recover from an eating disorder. Now, I'm here to help you along the road to living a new life on your terms, not your eating disorders. So let's dive in and find new ways to thrive as you end the war with food and body, because you can recover. Hello, recovery besties. Welcome back to You Can Recover. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about the topic of weight gain in recovery, because I know that is something that a lot of people fear when you're recovering from an eating disorder. You wonder, will recovery and changing my relationship with food change the size of my body? Will it get bigger? And that can bring up a lot of, difficult feelings, and it can be very triggering for eating disorder behaviors. That does happen. So I think that's really important to talk about, especially as we explore the idea that maybe it's okay to gain weight. And I understand that might sound preposterous. I hear you. I definitely felt that way earlier in recovery too. But now I see things differently, and I will share with you 3 reasons why it's okay to gain weight in recovery. Really, it is. And first, I just want to take a moment to touch on the state of the world right now. I feel like I would be nuts to just go into this episode pretending like the US isn't on fire right now. I feel like I have lived a whole lifetime in these last 2 weeks since the last episode. I think part of that was, the inauguration happening, and now what just feels like a constant stream of very dystopian headlines happening in real time since then. That's been a lot. And also, I just got back to North Carolina a few days ago from visiting my home city back in Canada for a week. So that was a whirlwind, amazing, lovely, and also very busy. And leaving the country did not bring any kind of sheltering from talk about what's happening with Republicans and Trump and everything that's happening in the US right now, because everyone in Canada talks about Trump and US politics because, well, they're so closely related. The US and Canada are so culturally and economically intertwined. And of course, Canadians had a lot to say about tariffs. So I literally couldn't go to the gas station or 7-Eleven and buy a taquito without an employee or someone else there mentioning tariffs or Trump. So it was exhausting. I am just so exhausted by the world right now. I feel scared. I feel helpless. So forgive me if my energy feels maybe a bit different this episode. I am taking pressure off myself to be super polished with my presentation and my editing because dang, I need it right now. I feel like I'm hanging out. I feel like I am hanging on by a thread. And I'm also in the midst of treating an OCD flare up, and I'm in recovery from OCD too. And that's a lot to process and manage on its own. So we're out here, working with eating disorder recovery, other mental health recovery, and dealing with scary times in the world and what appears to be a rise of fascism. So it's okay if you're feeling exhausted and scared too. I'm right there with you. So just FYI, I'm going to skip the recovery win segment this week just to make things a tad simpler this time around. I think this episode, our recovery win, is showing up. You and I have showed up today imperfectly, and that's awesome, and that's okay. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean to be oh, wow, it's so much work to do this show and that I'm here begrudgingly, because I'm not. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be talking to you candidly about the fact that times are wild, times are difficult. It's okay to take some pressure off ourselves, and I want to be real about that. I think it's okay to slow down and change your strategy as needed and ebb and flow. So I'm kind of winging it today. I'm going to be really candid about that. And I hope that you can give yourself permission to do the same right now if you need to, or to just, take a break altogether. I know we're feeling overwhelmed and stretched thin, and that is so valid. You know what they say? Got to help yourself first before you help the world. Got to put your oxygen mask on before you put someone else's on. So take care of you during all this as well. And to be super clear, the state of the world is very relevant to eating disorder recovery. Eating disorders are political. they're a social issue, a political issue, and there's so many reasons why. But right now, as we get ready to explore the topic of weight gain and recovery, I want to touch on this post that I saw from Dr. Colleen Reichman. She's an eating disorder and body image therapist, and she has a lot of content on social media about those things. And she made a post that I just saw that I just thought was really relevant right now that I wanted to share with you. I'm just going to quote it word for word. So she wrote, quote, "I've been seeing people talk about the end of body positivity so much lately. And culturally, it does feel like a bit of a turning point. With the rise of GLP-1s for weight loss and major stores choosing to cut extended sizing options and the pursuit of health content, health meaning weight loss, that we are seeing pumped out at a high velocity, body positivity feels like it has very much taken a backseat." So here is some food for thought. It is so unsurprising that we are seeing this at this point in history. Historically, we see an ebb back to thinner ideals as part of a backlash against time periods when women made strides in independence. And our current administration seems very set on rolling back rights. It makes so much sense if urges to engage in intentional weight loss are higher right now, and we need your expansiveness and clarity of thought more than ever. End quote. And I really love this post. I think it's so important to share and amplify. So I wanted to share it with you today. And I have done some facilitating for like a body image group. There's a program called the Women's Body Initiative. It's like a cognitive dissonance based body image group to help people, make peace with their body. And when I facilitated this group, it's not political. Like, it's not political at all, but it was just so interesting how many times the topic came up when we were like, really breaking down the source of beauty ideals, and just so many people had these light bulb moments in this group that were like, if we try to stay small, like, we're not just physically small, like, we're small as women, like, our voices are smaller and we're focused, we're distracted. Like, so many people were saying, like, it's all a distraction. And I cannot agree more. And that's not to say, like, oh my God, get over your eating disorder. We have other things to worry about here. It's so valid if that struggle is coming first right now compared to other things. It's just like Dr. Colleen Reichman said, some food for thought, something to think about and consider as you go through the recovery process. Does it really help you get the life that you want to live when you are focused on shrinking? Does it help you build the world that you want? It might be taking the power away from you and being the full, amazing, influential, awesome human that you are. Just some things to think about. All right. It's heavy times. I know. But eating disorder recovery is political, and it would feel, to put it bluntly, inauthentic, I think, to release an episode right now not touching on that. So yeah, glad we talked about that, and we'll certainly continue to talk about it as the series goes on. And right now, let's get into the meat of the episode and explore 3 reasons why it's okay to gain weight in recovery. When you have an eating disorder, your body, mind, and soul and entire being is just wired to resist weight gain. You want to avoid getting bigger or gaining weight at any cost possible. But then you enter recovery, and people like me right now, they're telling you it's okay to gain weight. And obviously, living with an eating disorder and living in a society obsessed with thinness, it's a lot easier said than done to just believe that, and that's so valid. And I stand by what I said. It's okay to gain weight. It's okay to be fat. It's okay to be thin. It's okay to be mid-sized. It's okay to be exactly the size that you are, and whatever size you've been in the past and whatever size you may be in the future, because bodies can and do change. And maybe you're thinking like, Andrea, how could you say that? It's okay to gain weight. It's okay to be fat. We live in a society that says the exact opposite, and these messages are loud. And internally, I remember when I was considering, when I first heard the idea that like it's okay to not be skinny, to not have to try and be skinny, it's okay to gain weight. And I remember just thinking like, well, what if, no one will accept me if I stop trying to lose weight? What if I lose the respect of my friends, my family, romantic partner, or employer? These fears are legitimate. Weight stigma and weight discrimination is real. It's very real. It's well documented. And you can make peace with your body in the midst of it, no matter what size you are. And then another thing you might be thinking of, because this is what I thought of too back in the day, was okay, so like aesthetics aside, beauty ideals aside, when it comes to body size, what about health? Isn't gaining weight bad for my health? Like, okay, so I don't need to be skinny to be hot, whatever, we can put that to the side, but my health, what about that? And you know what? That's a great question. What about health? And we'll start there with the first of our 3 reasons on why it's okay to gain weight in recovery. Reason number 1, weight does not equal health. That is a very widely perpetuated myth. It's not that simple. Old news, fake news. It simply just doesn't work like that. I don't ever want to pretend like I'm an advocate. I have lived experience with recovery. I have professional experience as a podcaster and facilitating groups, but I'm not a scientist. I'm not an eating disorder therapist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pretend to be any of those things. This is never health advice. So I'll just share with you what I've learned and what I've come to understand in my years of recovery and through doing all that work and meeting and speaking with and interviewing and working with people who are those things, who are doctors, who are registered dietitians, who are researchers and scientists, which is that quite simply, having more weight on your body does not make you more unhealthy. And I used to think, well, no, like the science says it does. Not really. There's certainly, and if I'm being fully honest, this might not even be the best day to get into this topic because I want to really get into the science and the data about it. But again, I'm trying to go easy on myself and just wing it today. So, what I've learned from other professionals, the new emerging consensus is that, so yes, there is a correlation between body size and health risks for certain conditions, but that is not the same as causation. I think any scientists will tell you that correlation does not equal causation, but that seemed to be like an accepted thing when it comes to food and body size. But it seems that the science shows more that it's behaviors, that there's certain health behaviors that matter more than your body size in terms of achieving better health or improving your health. And if you look at the World Health Organization, which that's a triggering topic politically right now. So they have, so the World Health Organization has a whole page all about the determinants of health. And nowhere does it mention weight or body size. And most progressive medical and health resources are starting to embrace that it's not so relevant, not like we thought it was before. And being fat, being thought of as a problem is pretty new in society. It's been like considered a problem for maybe a century or so. That's nothing in terms of like human history. And think of how much science and medicine has evolved with so many other things in that. And it would be silly to just assume that, honestly, this outdated idea that fat equals unhealthy is just, the end all be all, despite it being based on pretty flawed science, outdated science, old research. And so, anyway, the World Health Organization determinants of health, I'm going to list them all to you. I'm going to list everything that they say here. So, according to the World Health Organization, these are the determinants of someone's health: income and social status. Higher income and social status are linked to better health. The greater the gap between the richest and poorest people, the greater the differences in health. The next determinant of health is education. Low education levels are linked with poor health, more stress. The next determinant is physical environment. Safe water, clean air, healthy workplaces, safe houses, safe communities, and safe roads all contribute to good health. Another determinant of health is social support networks. So the more support that you have from family, friends, and community, that is linked to better health outcomes. And the next factor, a big one, is genetics. Inheritance plays a huge part in determining lifespans, healthiness, and the likelihood of developing certain illnesses. And the last 2 determinants of health, according to the World Health Organization, is health services and gender. So that's the whole list. Body size, weight, fat, not mentioned once. Um, I go to a doctor. I go to a whole like medical doctor practice, like my primary care physician. They are all weight neutral, health at every size aligned. They don't weigh you. They don't talk about weight. Like this is a progressive place with medical doctors who know that weight is really irrelevant to health. And it's so freeing to find that because I know weight stigma can play such a big role in eating disorders. And I know that these types of medical practices are not the norm. They're coming up more and more. I'm hearing about lots of them in different cities. Even if it's not necessarily an entire practice that's dedicated to it, like this one is, certain individual doctors that can be weight neutral and separate weight from health. So it's a growing thing. I think we're going to continue to see it evolve as more people leave behind the old, outdated, incorrect idea that fat equals unhealthy and move towards a much more nuanced, actual health promoting thing. Because going around telling people that fat equals unhealthy, shrink yourself at every cost, that just brings you to exactly where we are now, having a history of an eating disorder, which is way worse for your health than any allegedly extra body fat could be. And the next reason on why it's okay to gain weight is your body is not your worth. Putting medicine and science aside, we're just going to talk about you and what makes you worthy and amazing. And it has nothing to do with that sack of flesh and bones that you live in. Let me tell you. And beauty ideals are so real. They are so real. I know. And they're also kind of irrelevant. It's just nonsense that us humans came up with. Think of how many times, even in our own lifetime, even like I'm in my 30s, and I can think of how beauty ideals have changed and, evolved and gone up and down, and different things, different looks and different body types are put on a pedestal for a while, and it changes. Like, I just feel like that highlights the meaninglessness of body ideals and beauty ideals. I can tell you right now from my own experience that being thin and beautiful, according to society, does not equal happiness. Um, I've only been thin for very brief parts of my life, and I really had to starve myself and hate myself and harm myself to get thin. But for the brief periods of times where I maybe objectively fit like societal beauty ideals, oh God, let me tell you, I was the last thing from happy. I was miserable. I hated myself. I was deep in the depths of an eating disorder, depression, addiction. I didn't think I was worthy of life or living or having a good life. My life was horrible. I was not happy. Thin did not equal happiness. I didn't even really understand that I was thin. I still thought I was so fat and ugly because I had an eating disorder. Um, and let me tell you now, in recovery, being almost the fattest that I've ever been, my life is the best that it has ever been. To have done the work in recovery and gone to treatment and continued focusing on recovery and just making it my lifestyle and embracing the idea that my body is not my worth. It's not why I'm happy. It doesn't make me happy. What makes me happy is living a life according to my values, connecting with people who I love and care for, and they care for me, and having wonderful experiences with them, seeing the world and traveling, enjoying music and hobbies, doing work that I'm passionate about. That's what makes me happy. None of that has anything to do with my body size. And I'm, again, almost the fattest I've ever been. And I'm the happiest. I mean, life certainly still has struggles. Life is never perfect. As I mentioned, dealing with OCD, which is a chronic condition and flares up and down. That's something that I'm coming to terms with. And not every day is perfect. I'm fighting my brain. The world at large is difficult right now. That doesn't mean that like life is perfect if you let it go. But if you let go, striving to be thin or putting that ideal on a pedestal. But I can tell you it's a hell of a lot better to embrace the true nuance of happiness and unhappiness without having it anything to do with your body size. My body is my vessel, and I'm living such a better life, fat and recovered, than I ever did thin and in the midst of a debilitating eating disorder. And again, I'm winging it today. I would come with like more resources and more than just my own experience to back up the idea that your body is not your worth. But I hope that my experience helps you today. And again, this is something we'll continue to talk about as the series goes on. And I want to touch on again, those fears of not being accepted or not being loved. Will the people in your life still respect you or care for you or love you if you gain weight? For me in my life, yes. No one ever loved me for my body. My friends, my family, the people in my life, my employers valued me for everything that's not physical about me. And that was true for where I've been in my life lately. When I was younger, that might not be the case. I might have had some friends back in the day who would maybe value me less or be disappointed if I gained weight. And you know what? That's not even true. I can think of at least one person, my dad, who's maybe not always been thrilled about me gaining weight or being fat, but I'm at a place now where I just know that says way more about him than it does about me. So I just want to say that the people who really care about you, the people who matter, they're not going to care about your body size no matter what happens to it. They love you for you. And if you do have people in your life who might care about that and might express disappointment, whether implicitly or explicitly, that has nothing to do with you. The ones who care about your body don't matter. And the ones who matter don't care about your body. So if you think about it, if you're striving to be thin or resisting gaining weight to impress possibly no one, because the real people who matter in your life might not care. And if it does impress someone, is that really someone that is worth impressing? Something to think about there. Now, the third reason on why it is okay to gain weight in recovery is when you gain weight in recovery, you gain other things too. It's kind of cliche, but it's true. And you might not gain weight in recovery. That's another thing to keep in mind. But recovery is all about just embracing that no matter what happens, if you get bigger or smaller, it's all ultimately neutral. But for some people, recovery and changing your behaviors can equate to weight gain. And in that case, you are gaining other things too. You are gaining, first of all, mental clarity from being properly and adequately and consistently nourished. Malnutrition can impair concentration, memory, and decision making. So, proper nourishment can just help you think more clearly and be more present in life. Gaining weight in recovery can also mean gaining time, gaining back time that you used to spend hating yourself and trying to shrink yourself. And now you can spend that time on nourishing yourself, nurturing yourself, finding the you outside of your eating disorder, finding your hobbies and living the life according to your values. Oh, and I want to touch on when I'm talking about like how malnutrition can impair certain functions of the body and mind. Remember that malnutrition is at any size too. If you are fat or in a larger body, you can absolutely be malnourished and under energized. But please know that this applies to you too. So no matter what your size, eating disorder behaviors can affect your neurobiology. According to a really informative article on brain health and eating disorders from Within Health, which is an online virtual treatment center, eating disorders can cause physical and functional changes in the brain. This has been seen in brain scans that have found with people in eating disorders, there is a loss of brain mass, a loss of brain anatomy, changes in brain chemistry, changes in brain blood flow, changes in neurological hormones. And these things result in, affecting your cognitive processing. So when you're adequately nourished and maybe gaining weight from that, you're gaining your brain health back, your clarity and brain functioning, and getting all of that back in order. And another thing that you can gain along with weight in recovery is improved relationships. So when you're not consumed by an eating disorder and food and body, you have more energy to connect with others in a more deep and authentic way and show up and be present for social and community experiences. You can improve your relationship not just with other people, but with yourself. When you are clear headed and you're nourished and you're there, you have so much to gain from that to build that happy life that you ultimately want. And of course, gaining weight in recovery can mean gaining freedom, freedom from obsessive thoughts, from food rules, from self hatred and constant worry. A full life is worth so much more than staying trapped in eating disorder patterns. Because let me tell you, I know that constantly fighting against your body and hating it and hating yourself is exhausting. It's tiring. So, gaining weight can mean having a moment to breathe, gaining peace, rest, freedom from those obsessive thoughts, and the ability to just truly show up for that life that you want. So, to recap the three reasons on why it's okay to gain weight in recovery: number one, weight does not equal health. Number two, your body is not your worth. And number three, when you gain weight in recovery, you can gain other things too. So thanks for joining me, and thank you for allowing me to show up a little imperfectly and unpolished today. This might be a shorter episode too. Yeah, let's just take some pressure off ourselves. Normally I like to end an episode with a nice, polished, tied together conclusion, but we're being real today, and I'm just going to say thanks for being here. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. We're showing up. That's all we can do. And if you can't do that some days, that's fine too. Don't show up. Take care of yourself. So yeah, I'm glad we could touch base and just talk a little bit about the world right now and how that affects us in recovery. And we'll keep going until next time. And feel free, as always, to hit me up through email. You can recoverpod@gmail.com, or on Instagram, you can recoverpod. If you want to chat recovery or have any thoughts, I am always down to hear from you. Okay, until next time. Thanks for listening in to this episode of You Can Recover. Remember, recovery takes time, and you're one step closer after listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with someone else in your life who is working to make peace with food and body. Until next time, be kind to yourself, and remember, you can recover.